Hello everyone.
The conflict that began between Iran and Israel on June 15, 2025 has finally come to a halt on June 24th as a result of a ceasefire. In these 12 days of fighting, Iran suffered nearly 935 casualties, including more than 60 commanders and nuclear scientists, while around 5,000 people were injured. Many nuclear sites, military bases, missile depots, and gas and oil fields were destroyed. On the other hand, in Israel, around 30 people were killed, nearly 3,200 were injured, and many residential and military installations in Tel Aviv, Ramat Gan, Bat Yam, Haifa, Bnei Brak, and Rishon LeZion were targeted by missiles. Now apparently the fighting has stopped and there is silence on both sides, but this is just a small pause because many of the world's powers do not actually want this conflict to end. The issue of war between Iran and Israel is not as simple as it appears. A small example of this,
Like map animated videos related to focus on geography, then be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can keep getting notifications for new videos.
is that on June 15th, when the conflict was at its peak, 5 Sun 4 Sun cargo planes took off from China and after passing through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, disappeared from radar as they approached Iran. Officially, these planes were headed to Europe, but there was no further trace of them, and the fact that such heavy cargo planes disappeared from radar near Iran at the peak of this war is highly suspicious. Because right after that, Iran began attacking Israel with missiles that could not be intercepted and hit their targets with precision. And then the US also had to get involved in this conflict, and on June 22nd, it targeted Iran's Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear sites with 7 B-2 stealth bomber jets, forcing Iran to agree to a ceasefire. At least this is what Donald Trump claims. Initially, Donald Trump claimed that after these attacks, Iran's nuclear program had been completely destroyed. But later, US intelligence published a report stating that this strike had only set Iran's nuclear program back by a few months and had not completely eliminated it. On the other hand, Iran is preparing to end its deal with Russia and buy 4.5 generation J-10C fighter jets from China, which means that Iran is panic buying at the moment. Similarly, on July 2nd, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a law according to which Iran has ended its cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. So this peace is temporary because Iran hasn't given up its nuclear ambitions and Israel still believes that Iran is a threat to its existence. Now let's talk about the external players involved in this war. First comes the United States, which has a very tricky role in this war. The United States gives Israel full support. It provides weapons, intelligence, and diplomatic backing because Israel is strategically very important to the US. Israel is America's closest ally in the Middle East, whether it's about sharing intelligence or using military power in the region. Through Israel, the US keeps an eye on countries like Iran. By keeping Israel secure, the US maintains its hold in the Middle East. It's also because of Israel that the US can better secure its oil supplies and military bases in the region, since this entire area is highly volatile and prone to conflict.
But there is another very important factor, and that is the influence of the Israeli lobby in America. Groups like AIPAC have a lot of influence in Washington. They put pressure on Congress and the White House so that America continues to support Israel. These groups raise funds, support pro-Israel politicians, and show their power in the public. These groups control America's foreign policy, and they try to keep America-Israel relations strong, but America's support for Israel also creates a lot of challenges for it. In fact, America does not want to get stuck in a war because a lot of money will be spent on this war. That's why Americans will be against the war, and then this war will distract them from issues like China and Russia. According to recent surveys, Americans do not want America to get stuck in another war. That's why America is stuck in a difficult situation. If a war breaks out between Iran and Israel, then America's focus will move away from Russia, Ukraine, and even China. In the case of this war, all its resources and focus will be in the Middle East. That's why the American administration is now talking to European and Arab countries so that this matter can be cooled. So on the one hand, where America is in this complicated situation, there is another force quietly playing its game, and that is China. China has not yet officially given Iran any military or weapons, but China is doing a lot behind the scenes. It has two objectives. The first is to secure energy resources, and the second is to distract America. If we talk about energy, China is the country that buys the most oil from Iran. In June 2025, China bought 1.8 million barrels of oil from Iran every day, and this all accounts for 13.6% of China's total oil import. This is not an ordinary trade. It is like oxygen for Iran's economy, which is stuck in global sanctions. Similarly, China is also very interested in developing Iran's infrastructure. According to a 25-year agreement in 2021, China has promised to invest for $100 billion, and this money will be invested in Iranian oil, gas, railways, ports and tech projects. In May 2025, the first cargo vehicle from China has reached Iran's Epirin dry port, and this route was 25 days shorter than the sea. Due to this new land route, Iran will have less dependence on sea points like Strait of Hormuz, which can be blocked at any time. But the question is, why is China investing so much in Iran? The answer is very simple, and that is Iran's great location. Iran is right in the middle of the Middle East, Central Asia and the Indian Ocean, where China is working on its Belt and Road Initiative. If China controls these land trade routes, then it will get fast land access to the Gulf and Europe.
And then by uniting Iran with itself, China can break American influence in the Middle East, and that too without even firing a single shot. That's why China is a very important player in the Israel-Iran war. Now, China seems to be far away from this war, but it seems to benefit the most from this war. Because if this war goes on for a long time, then the entire focus of America will be on the Middle East, and as a result, it will pay less attention to what China is doing in Taiwan or the South China Sea. And in the meantime, China will get closer to Iran, which means that it will be able to make cheaper oil deals, railway deals and infrastructure deals. Now let's talk about Russia, which is another important player in this whole story. Russia and Iran have come very close to each other in the past few days. Russia also helps Iran in making technology and even nuclear energy projects. Russia is the country that supplies the most weapons. 70% of Iran's weapons have come from Russia, and these include tanks, artillery and advanced air defense systems. In 2016, Russia also gave Iran a powerful missile system like the S-300. And now both countries are working on drones. Russia has purchased more than 2,000 Shahed 136 drones from Iran to use in Ukraine. And in return, Russia is helping Iran in drone and missile technology. Similarly, nuclear cooperation is also underway. Russia has helped Iran a lot in making a nuclear power plant in Bashar. According to 2025 data, more than 600 Russian experts are working on this nuclear plant. Similarly, Russia and Iran have also signed a 20-year strategic agreement in January 2025. This agreement includes energy, infrastructure, military cooperation, cyber defense and intelligence sharing. One hand, where the Western powers are trying, Russia is doing the exact opposite. But then, why does Russia want Iran and Israel to never stop this war? The answer to this is again very simple. Just like China, Russia benefits a lot from America being distracted in this war. In fact, Russia wants to increase its influence in Eastern Europe, Ukraine and other places. If America focuses on them, it will not be able to focus on Russia's intentions. But this is where things get very interesting. Russia also has very good relations with Israel, and he also sells technology and weapons to Israel. In 2021, Russia sold $1.7 billion worth, which included defense and technology gadgets. Between 2009 and 2015, Russia bought $500 million worth of drones from such as Bird, I-400 and iView. So Russia is not playing on one side, but on both sides. If there is a full-scale war between Israel and Iran, Russia will benefit a lot. First of all, oil prices will go because most of the oil comes from the Middle East. And guess who will benefit the most from this? Obviously, Russia. Because it is one of the world's top oil and gas exporters. If oil prices go up, the Russian economy will get a boost, especially at a time when it has Western. Secondly, in the case of a big war, America will be deeply involved in the Middle East, due to which its focus and resources will move away from Eastern Europe and Ukraine. In this situation, Russia can take more aggressive steps in Ukraine, because then there will be no one to stop it. Similarly, keeping good relations with Iran and Israel. Russia is trying to convince itself as a global power by showing itself neutral. That is why the war between Iran and Israel is. And finally, let's talk about Arab countries. Arab countries such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain and Egypt are observing all this matter very nervously. These Arab countries were against Israel before, but now the ideas of Bahrain and UAE are changing. In 2020, the UAE signed a peace deal with Israel called Abraham Accords. As a result of this deal, the UAE began to cooperate with Israel in business, technology, and other things. Saudi Arabia has not made a deal yet, but according to some reports, its leaders are secretly meeting Israeli officials behind the scenes, because they both consider Iran a common enemy. But for these Arab countries, one problem is that they don't want another war on their doorstep, because this will endanger their economies and stability. But they don't even trust Iran's ambitions. Arab countries think that Iran is trying to spread Shia ideology in this area, especially countries such as Saudi, Bahrain, and UAE consider Iran's revolutionary and ideological thinking to be a threat to their integrity. Iran's system is based on the ideology of the Islamic Revolution. Just leaders rule there, and it is against kings and royal families. While in Arab countries, it is the kingdom that lives in the family or bloodlines. That's why some Arab leaders support Israel privately, but they are completely neutral in the public. So far, whatever we have discussed, whether it is America's support for Israel, China and Russia's benefit in this war, Arab countries not trusting Iran, or Iran's nuclear ambitions, all these things are clearly pointing out that this ceasefire is not going to last long. Many powers are getting a lot of benefit from this war, and many countries in the Middle East consider each other enemies. So this silence is just a waqf, because the real root problems are still the same. And in such a situation, it is obvious that this silence is going to break soon.
See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Take care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.